Hello, Internet friend. Today on Value Side, America and the Chinese Merchant. I'm David Ravel. Well, for over a millennia, the Chinese merchant has been the most revered and feared force in the Middle East. They are revered for their wide array of trade goods and products, but feared as an agent of control and subjugation. Throughout Southeast Asia, China projected its political control over countries like Korea and Vietnam by first utilizing the humble merchant to infiltrate each society. China must have been delighted when the richest prize of all, America, asked those Chinese merchants to come to us. Of course, that's not how Americans saw it, but that's the Chinese perspective. For the Americans, China represented just one more cog in the great American global hegemony. After fighting two proxy wars against China to a standstill, one in Korea and the other in Vietnam, Washington was ready to try a new strategy. President Richard Nixon and Secretary of State Henry Kissinger devised a détente with China, the American plan to welcome China into the 20th century and the global community of nations. U.S. leadership saw China as a backwater country needing American innovation and commercial prosperity, a new marketplace of U.S. products in which retailers like Sears Roebuck and Montgomery Ward would sell modern products like RCA Victor, Magnavox, or Hoffman color television sets, the very apex of American consumer goods. Once China consumers experienced the delights of U.S.-made products, they would become a marketplace for the ages, producing untold wealth and profits for American manufacturers. It was the Chinese pot of gold, and American political leadership and corporations have been buying into this dream ever since. That is, until Donald J. Trump, the businessman turned U.S. president from Queens, New York. However, during the first half-century of America's burgeoning détente with China, Washington treated the country as its benevolent colonizer, providing every benefit we could imagine for this, quote, developing country. Standards we considered essential were waived for China. Rumors of dangerous working conditions or even slave labor were brushed aside. Yes, it was true that Chinese workers endured long hours and subsistent wages, but that didn't matter. China was developing. Chinese factories are among the most environmentally damaging on earth, but no matter, developing, you know. At the height of irony, America sells China the very coal that we deem too polluting to use here in our own country. Recently, China has been granted access to our capital markets to sell stocks in America. Yet almost none of those Chinese companies adhere to the same accounting standards as required of all American companies, giving Chinese foreign corporations a significant advantage in raising capital provided by American shareholders. At the latest count, nearly 5,000 Chinese companies are listed on American exchanges, providing much-needed financial support for Chinese manufacturers and other commercial enterprises. Add these all up, the lowered safety and compensation standard for workers, the non-existent environmental standards, and even the American financial support, and the result was an insurmountable cost advantage for the makers of Chinese goods. However, beyond the cost advantage, let's not lose sight of the fact that the Chinese economic system is not a free enterprise system like the U.S. The Chinese system is an amalgam of state control and private initiative, in which the goals and objectives of the CCP take precedence over all else. In just a few short decades, China has built an unconquerable moat, to use a modern financial idiom, a price structure that was impossible for American manufacturers to match. Much of this advantage came from the regulations enacted in Washington, designed to promote the best of all conditions here, but ignoring the geo-economic effect that this would have on our trade with China. As American producers became more regulated, the Chinese cost advantage grew. So in a move that would make the 19th century robber barons blush, China captured the American markets one by one. Low-priced goods, toys, and gadgets were among the first to move offshore. Walk down a toy aisle today, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a single American-made doll or game. Consumer electronics followed, and I dug up some of the old names of U.S. television makers for this article. Eventually, high-tech precision machinery, equipment, and electronics, such as smartphones, lab equipment, and medical devices, all moved offshore to follow. Consider this. Even if Chinese manufacturers were required to meet all the standards for workers, environment, safety, they would still not pass the Sherman antitrust regulations, as China's predatory pricing alone would disqualify them. Classical economists from Adam Smith onward consider the ideal economy one in which the consumer and the producer are roughly equal. This ideal economy would involve a nation that produces nearly everything it needs and the consumer purchases its production. Today, America is as far away from that ideal as is conceivable. The American consumer makes up 60 to 70% of all the economic activity in this nation. Not as many espouse because we're the richest buyers in the world, but because we have little production, the direct result of China moving our production offshore. Now, none of this was by accident. Through shrewd planning and multi-generational perspective, China has utilized a strategy of market capture that has subjugated millions over the centuries. Today, the Chinese merchant is winning. It's time for America to meet their challenge. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/David Revill. That's REAVILL. Buymeacoffee.com/David Revill. Thanks for listening.